everybody. Welcome to Matters Over Miles.
Season 2.
Season 2. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
There's more people in this season than just us.
So good. And we'll do that with current events. But yes, this is the beginning of Season 2. Season 2 is going to look a little bit different in that we are doing more interviews, hence this handsome man over to, your right, my left. But we are in Seattle currently shooting this episode of the podcast. Season 2 is going to be a little bit more, Season 1 was good and in-depth for personally, I would say, like one-on-one things to think like alone in a corner. But this, we're trying to...
Alone in a corner.
Involve a few more people. We're just going deep, and we're doing it to the best of our abilities with people that we love. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like you to meet our very good friend, Zawadi Morrow. Woo!
Hi, everybody.
Hooray!
Applause.
So, like we said, we are in Seattle, and Zawadi is...
Specifically, we're at University Presbyterian Church.
Yes, where Zawadi works. Can you tell people what exactly is your role here, and then, like how long you've been in Seattle and all that good stuff?
Yeah. My name is Zawadi. I have been here at University Presbyterian Church for 2 years. 2.5 years, I guess. No, 2.5. Hey.
Wow.
Time's cruising.
Yeah.
I am the Associate Director of Worship here, and this is one of those lovely church communities that has a contemporary service and a traditional service.
Yes.
Awesome.
So I get to take care of our contemporary services, and we have a couple of those every Sunday. And so I kind of oversee those, help structure those, lead those. And then as far as Seattle, been here for almost 10 years, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Time flies.
Yeah, man.
While we've been out here in Seattle, I worked at Seattle Pacific University for full time for about five years, which was great. And then good old SPOO. And then I did some adjunct faculty teaching for a couple of years after that, and transitioned kind of out of higher ed into church world.
Yeah.
Helped a couple of friends of mine plant a church, and was kind of their worship leader, worship director for a couple of years, and then have transitioned over here to UPC, and been here. So
we've kind of just followed him around.
Yeah.
So like whenever we come out to
church.
Seattle,
Yeah.
we've played at SPU, we
Yeah.
played at a Seattle church.
That's right.
And now we've played at UPC here, which is awesome.
So the general trend has always been Zawadi.
Yeah, it's just wherever Zawadi's
Zawadi and Jesus.
working, we end up just coming out and leading worship on a Sunday and hanging out with their crew for a little bit. So.
Yes, it's been super fun.
And the original connection was we actually went to school with Zawadi.
Yeah, you were
And
in
his
grad
wife
school.
was the administrative assistant over our department at school. So we kind of like would always be
Shout out
talking
to
to her
Erin.
about getting forms signed and
Oh my gosh! all the what was it? All of the choral and different concerts or little like
the,
side things that we did. She
the
had
credits
to
that we had to get like a certain amount of credits for going to see live music
Yep.
events, and
Yep.
she'd have to sign off on them.
I'm pretty sure she fudged a bunch of those for a few of us.
Nick,
I don't think you're wrong.
Nick is producing this episode for us, and yes, you are probably completely telling the truth on that.
He's our producer bat hanging in the shadows.
Yeah. So we've known Zawadi for a really long time. Kind of the point of season 2
Yes.
of this podcast is our initial intent was to kind of give people a wider perspective on church and what we do and kind of the people that we hang out with around the world, but mostly just around our very vast country. And since we have had no limit to the amount of controversial issues and divisive conversations and pie throwing and name calling and all the things in this last year, we thought, you know what? for such a time as this. So we are traveling to and fro to film these interviews with people that we have worked alongside of for the better part of a decade in a lot of cases, just to talk about a specific topic that we feel they have like some really good insight into as far as where they live and what they've been through in their personal experience.
Zawadi will quickly toss aside expert as a title, but
Yes.
I don't know, man.
He
He's
might
got
be an
some
expert
stuff.
on this topic we're going to talk about today. So
We'll see.
it's added value to our existence and like to
Always.
how we do things and like how we see people and how we see God. And so we are kind of just wanting to give you an open window into some of that value that we have been able to just latch onto with people that we know and trust. So
And also, I thought while Zawadi was talking, how excited I am to listen to this in my own headphones again because his voice is so nice. I was like,
he has a very
yes.
calming.
man.
Oh my gosh. Even when we have like had times where we're talking about like hard stuff or you're talking about family things or we're talking about stuff, I am always surrounded
Yep.
by the peace of your voice.
Oh, man.
So
I mean it,
Special.
man. I'm just
That's
like,
special.
this is a thing that I got from Zawadi. When you ask a difficult question that's like multifaceted and you want like an answer, like a succinct answer, he starts the answer with so. And I've
Very
realized
true.
that
Very true.
I've started to do that. So now you'll all probably realize whenever that happens,
Aw,
like in this
yay.
podcast, but also specifically from him.
So-
You ask a question and he kind of like launches into it. Like it's not like I'm going to start up here. It's like, let's like just ease into this.
it's so safe. So safe when you get to be with Zawadi.
So yeah, I
That's
mean,
why he's here, because we love him.
yeah.
How's that?
Thank you guys. I love you too.
Yeah.
Stop. I
This
can't.
little
I
chord
can't.
situation.
Nothing
so
but
good.
love.
There we go.
All right. So you have your things in your back pocket ready
Yeah.
to go.
So okay, so season 1, we kind of did current events, but
yeah.
we're recording these like in such a way that the current events topic is probably going to be mostly just like how we know the people and how
Yes.
we got to where we are, and
Yes.
and probably the thematic thing that I think is going to be reiterated from episode to episode is going to be the poke the bear moment.
Oh man. So last season we would have current events and then we would have meat and potatoes.
Okay.
Dang it! But this time is probably going to
The
burp, burp, burp.
reoccurring theme is going to be
Poke the bear.
which is going to be like the part of the conversation where we're like, let's get a little more uncomfortable than we are right at this moment. So that will come later. But first, Zawadi, the reason that we are in your wonderful, beautiful church building today is because we wanted to talk to you and we wanted you to talk to whoever is watching this show about adoption.
Sweet. I can do that.
Yeah, you
Which
can.
Zawadi has many perspectives and many storylines that all kind of intersect about adoption. So let's just start off with you kind of giving people an overview of your personal story.
Yeah. I started out life in Eastern Congo, DRC.
So cool.
It was Zaire when I was born, so that's kind of what I think of it as. And super remote, small, tiny village in the middle of the forest. And my biological mom ended up passing away in the process of birthing me due to complications. And because it's so remote and out there weren't hospitals, there weren't healthcare, that sort of thing. So there's always in those contexts just inherent risk, I suppose, in that. And so the tribe that I was born into, the tradition is that usually when that happens, they blame the baby for the death of the mom. And generally they will bury the baby with the mom when they bury the mom. And which is crazy.
Yeah.
But that was the tradition at the time. My biological dad was not in the picture. He was kind of strung out on drugs and all kinds of other stuff. And so there was a young girl named Kavira, who was there when I was born. She kind of helped deliver me, and she was kind of the one who was responsible for going to this European missionary family that lived in the village. And she came to them and basically said, look, here's, this baby's been born, and here's kind of the tradition. This is probably what's going to happen with this child. And based on what you guys have been teaching us about the Bible, God, life, all that stuff,
Wow.
this tradition doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. So you should probably do something about
Dude,
that.
Kavira is awesome.
Yes. And so she ended up bringing me to them. And they initially, obviously were like, surprise, here's a baby that you weren't expecting. And sort of over the course of several weeks, several months, initially their response was like, okay, we'll take care of this kid for a little bit, and then we'll return this kid to his family, and it was my grandfather who, on my dad's side, who basically, according to the customs, he was the one that kind of had custody over me, if you will. And he was kind of the one that said, look, this child doesn't really have a future here. The name that I would have been given essentially means he who has no mother or brothers. Lovely uplifting name.
My gosh.
And so he was like, look, there's this child doesn't really have a future here. And you guys have the opportunity to give this child a future. And so that's what I think you should do, basically. And so that's kind of the real sort of Cliff Notes version. And so
Such good
they ended up
notes.
adopting me, and here we are.
Come on,
somehow in
dude.
Seattle.
And now we're in Seattle all together.
Just like that.
Wow.
Wow.
So are your parents the people that were actually in? Because I don't think I've ever heard the full side of this. I've gotten bits and
Yeah.
pieces. But yeah, so the people that were the missionaries,
Yep.
they're
That's
your
my parents. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Great.
Yep.
And they were like, okay.
Yeah.
We're doing
so
this.
it was, they had two kids of their two biological kids, who were 11 and 13 at the time. So they weren't exactly thinking of, hey, we need another baby.
No. Yeah.
But it was, I give them a lot of honor because it was a really difficult process for them. They'd been missionaries for, it would have been about a decade and a half at that point. And their mission organization that they worked for actually said that if they adopted me, that they would have to stop being missionaries.
No
joke.
way.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Was
so
there reasons why? Or just kind of like a,
I believe some of the reasons were just around either that never works out well, or we
Okay.
don't feel like you need to be that intertwined, connected with the people you're serving. I'm not really sure.
okay, cool.
And yeah, they kind of had this sort of real fork in the road moment of like, we really felt like our calling was to be missionaries and serve these people.
Wow.
But, what do we do? What do we do? And, obviously they got to the point where like, doesn't matter. We're going to adopt this child.
Yeah. So how long were
and-
you in Africa, like as their son, before you came back to America
It would have been,
Or came to America.
for the first time?
yeah, that's right.
Before they came back to
Let's see, I was 9 years in Kenya, and maybe cumulatively about a year and a half in the Congo where I was born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, wow.
So Wadi also has this
Man.
incredible tendency to just be global at all times.
World's a lovely place.
Yes, but some of the places you've been, I've just always been like, wow. Like you did and this is a sidebar note, it's a rabbit trail, but what was it? You did a week of flights?
Yeah, I flew around the world. I've done this a couple times
with
now.
points, right?
Yeah.
Racked up a bunch of miles, airplane miles.
No big deal at all.
Yeah,
I
right.
flew around the world.
You
no
don't
big deal,
understand. Oh yeah, just casually cool like
As one
Zawadi.
does. No, I had the opportunity to go to a worship conference in Sydney with Hillsong Church.
Right.
And I wanted to bring some folks along from the worship team here, and kind of had a set budget to work with, and realized if I sort of blow the budget on flights, et cetera, just for me, that almost racks it up. So I thought, okay, I've been touring and playing a bunch of places. I got a ton of air miles. If I just use my air miles, then I can take that money and use it to get more people there.
Yeah.
And so
okay, sure.
that was the initial idea. And then I thought, it would kind of be fun to just, scoot around the globe. And then I realized as I was piecing everything together, I was like, oh, I have enough miles that I can do this in first class the whole way, which was great. That'll be another experience.
Dreams come true.
And so that's what I did. It was, I think it was like technically 6 days from
I just
from
remember
point to point.
you talking about it, and then that was the last time we hung out. Yeah, when was that? Or
That was
you were
a year.
getting ready to go do that, and it was going to be 4 months or something after. I don't
Yeah.
know, but whatever it was, I was stoked on your behalf. And then when it actually was happening, I was like, "He's going! It's so cool."
Yeah, it was super fun. I really enjoyed it, and I'd love to do it again.
You
it's-
will, whatever. It'll
for
probably
sure.
happen. Yeah.
So
Crazy.
Let me know next time. Maybe I can try and do stuff myself. I would love to do that.
We should do it.
So
all together.
just kind of emphasizing just the global mindset that you have, but like the global heart, global spirit. Like God made you for all of that stuff. So when you moved to the States, where did you move?
Yeah.
With your family?
So we moved to North Carolina, little mountain town called Boone.
I think
lovely
I've
place
driven
to
past
be.
there.
Sort of smack dab in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains, and this was right before I started high school that we moved, and that was a wonderful cultural shift in and of itself. Yeah, that was an experience. So I was there for, 8 years, nine years, something like that. Did high school there. I did my undergrad there as well. Yeah, it's an interesting place to come to for sure. For sure.
Boone. Boone with an E,
Yeah.
North Carolina.
And your parents, was that interesting for them, like moving back to the States, but also like, it's like, oh, white people.
Yeah. Wow, there's a lot of white people. Yeah, it was, I feel like it was interesting for them too. Like, our family is so weird to begin with, right? Like there's me, then there's, my dad, he's from Ireland. He's got a thick Irish accent. My mom's German, so she's got sort of this German-Irish, accent. And then to move to like a small town in, the South, was a thing, So, yeah, it was an adjustment for them too, for sure.
Yeah.
At that point, they had been missionaries for like 27, 28 years, something like that in Africa.
Jeez.
And I remember as a kid when my dad was processing that shift and that move. Essentially, my dad got reached out to by NGO Samaritan's Purse, and they had asked if he would kind of come and oversee all of their sort of mission work that they've been doing in Africa. And I remember one night as a kid, we were still living in Nairobi in Kenya, and I like woke up in the middle of the night, was thirsty. I remember going downstairs, get a drink of water. It was probably, I don't know, 3, 4 in the morning, something like that. And I remember walking past the living room and I saw my dad like on his knees, like crying and praying. And he just was like agonizing over this decision about like what to do. You know, so yeah, I mean, it was a big shift. Like we didn't really know anybody per se in the United States, except for my older sister. She had just married a guy from Michigan. So they lived in Michigan.
Okay.
You know, but other than that, it just was like all of our family was sort of in Africa and Europe.
Yeah.
And Australia at the time. I had an aunt in Australia at the time. You know, so it was a big shift. It was a big change for everybody. Yeah.
Crazy. So I feel like a lot of people might hear some of that or even like imagine that some of those like big cultural shifts and stuff would be like a deterrent to wanting to adopt, except for that the second half of your story in large part I feel like kind of squelches some of those thoughts.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind talking about the more recent developments in
Yeah.
your adoption story.
So we, my wife and I, and she's from Boone, so there's that whole wonderful cross-cultural relationship. But we adopted a little girl from China a year and a half ago. I guess coming up on 2 years almost. And like I remember when I started getting serious when we were dating. I remember telling her like super early on, I was like, just so you know, like adoption is for sure going to be a part of my life. And that needs to, we need to like cross that bridge now. Cause that's kind of a deal breaker if you're like, no, I'm not into that.
Yeah.
And she obviously we got married. She's fine with it.
We're good.
So, spoiler alert.
Spoiler, we got married and we adopted.
But so like we always knew we were gonna adopt. We always knew it was gonna be part of our story, part of our family. And we started like a coin jar, like when we lived in Virginia, like we were not making lots and lots of money, and obviously, so we
While you were a grad student and she was
grad
working
student, she's working
as an administrative assistant.
Yeah,
Cash wasn't necessarily
God took care of
flowing.
us, right? So we started coin jar because we were like, we want to get in that practice and the habit of doing something that reminds us of the commitment we've already made, even though now isn't the season.
Yes.
So just like do something. So it was a coin jar at first, and then after that got into a few $100s, and we turned it into a bank account and just kept putting savings in that way. Because we knew whatever route we chose for adoption it's likely going to come with some costs and things like that. So that just made sense. And then as we got closer, we've got our son is our biological kid. So he was
so cute.
2, I want to say, when we started the adoption process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember we were trying to think through like what is that going to look like, and we kind of landed on, we felt like we were uniquely equipped to deal with like an international adoption specifically.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that helps. But then it was like, where? And that sort of discernment process was kind of interesting because we kind of got to the place where we were like, look, there's kids all over the world that need families.
Yeah,
it just seems weird to like pick
one.
and choose out of preference, you know?
Yeah.
So we kind of just decided, look, let's try to be smart about it. Let's find an agency that has a good track record that we want to work with.
Yeah.
And then let's take a look at the countries that they work in and see which countries have had sort of the best track record in terms of sort of least amount of complications and disruptions and things like that. And so that's kind of how we ended up with China. And it's funny because that's for sure, like I would say, if you were to look at my extended family, Asia is about the only continent that isn't represented in that sense.
Oh, I love
So it was sort of like it was cool and equally like, oh, we got a lot to learn, all at the same time.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we kind of jumped into that process, and the way that we ended up with our daughter, which was kind of interesting, was one of the first, when we first like submitted our paperwork. I remember my wife Erin, she saw a photo of this little girl within the first couple of days, and she was already in process with another family at the time, and we just moved on. And maybe about a year later, that process fell through with that family, and we came across this girl again, but didn't know it was the same girl, which is kind of interesting. And because of our process got disrupted by a year with China, because they had just, this was in like, I want to say May or so. We were about to submit like our last piece of paperwork that would kind of get us fully in the process. When China released some new legislation that said if you're an international adopting family, your youngest child needs to be at least, I think it was like 3 years old or something like that before you can complete the process.
I remember you guys going through that.
Yeah, and our son was 2 at the time, and it just was like, man, it literally, we were like, I think 2 weeks away from submitting the final paperwork, and this got, it's just like, wow, okay. So a few months later, this little girl's photo came up again in passing, and my wife Erin, she called me up and she was like, I think this is supposed to be our daughter.
Wow.
And she was like, are you okay if I like ask some more information about it? And we were like, I don't know, Cohen was like 2.5, and I remember telling Erin, I was like, I don't know if that's such a good idea. Like, we literally can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And in the back of my mind, I was like, look, I don't want to have a child tied up in a process waiting for us when they could be adopted by another family in the meantime, and those sorts of things. But she was like, no, I really feel like this is our daughter. And I was like, okay, I'll trust you.
That doesn't sound like Erin at all.
Not at all. And so she like inquired about it, and kept pushing the matter. I was like, is there like nothing we can do? And our agency was like, well, okay, so we've had one other family in like the history of whatever that was able to get like some kind of exception from the government to some of these rules.
Okay.
And she's like, so you're saying there's a chance? And so we basically pushed through all of that, and we were given an exception to that. And
That's
so
amazing.
Wow.
Yay, God.
Yeah.
Wow.
She did end up literally as our daughter. And so she's been home with us for like I said, it's almost been 2 years, and she has albinism, so she's got this white hair, and
She's so cool looking.
Her
hair is my goals, man.
Yeah.
When I dyed my hair, I was like, why can't my hair be like hers?
So it's super special, and we ended up we kept her Chinese name, which is Endon, as her middle name, and then we gave her the first name Kavira, which was the woman that sort of is responsible for my life.
So good.
And so I don't know, full circle.
Very full circle.
Yeah.
That was perfect. Way to tie that up there.
Yeah.
So like, I really appreciate your story, because I feel like in the conversation about adoption in the States, there's like many different perspectives on it, and nobody would say like adoption is bad. I don't think.
Yeah,
like
hope
that's
not.
kind of like
I know, right?
that's like not really a common thing to hear. Like, oh, I would never, like, you shouldn't adopt kids. Like, that's just not a thing that comes across conversation very often. But there are many things I think that people kind of like quietly squint their eyes at, like, well, why would you adopt from overseas? It's so expensive. Like, you could be spending money on these things, or adopting kids in the States, or there's always some kind of like snark
Yeah.
that kind of underlines like the process by which people come to figuring out how to adopt, how, if they want to adopt, if they feel called to adopt, like they have like this feeling of like, well, adoption is for other people, but not for me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like all of these different kind of like qualifiers, I think, to like conversations that are had about adoption.
And I really liked what you had to say too, Zawadi, about the international understanding that you guys had, that global perspective. And
That's like the reason why you wanted to
I think that's
specifically
cool.
do that.
I've never heard someone say that, but you have more experience than most. So I
Right.
think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So like, I think a lot of people could look at your story of adopting Kavira and say like, when you went through all of this hassle and this hardship and this trouble, and you could have just adopted a kid here.
Yeah.
But like, really the answer to that is like, well, you don't know the whole story and why we decided that like we wanted to do it this way, why we felt like God was leading in this direction.
Yeah.
You know, so like, if you want to speak a little bit to like maybe how people come to those decisions, and like whether or not there is a truly like a adoption is for you but not for me kind of piece.
Yeah. I mean, I think it sort of the way that it breaks down for me is like there's kids everywhere that need families. And it seems silly to try to, rank order or prioritize, well, this kid needs a family more than this kid or whatever, right? It's like there's kids in Seattle that need families. There's kids in, Nashville that need families. There's kids in Beijing or, wherever, Ghana, pick a town.
Right,
and
exactly,
There are children there who need families.
Totally.
So in that sense, it's like, I do think that a child getting a family is a net positive win, just period. And I want to, I would encourage people to know that like, however you arrive at which child you choose to adopt is a net positive. Like, it's not a bad thing. I don't think there should be, there shouldn't be any shame in that process. Let's toss that. That's not helpful.
Yeah.
And I think I also think from like a Christian perspective, I think God is big enough to hold all of these things together.
So good.
And God knows, the names and the faces of all of these kids that need families, and God knows who you are as a person, what uniquely makes you who you are.
Yes.
And I think if you're honest, if you're have a desire to adopt, I think honesty with yourself, honesty before God will bring you to the right space and the right place. And that's going to be great.
Yeah.
And to know that like God, like I feel this is true just about our how we inhabit the world as Christians. Like, I feel like God has uniquely gifted every single one of us to bring light into the spaces that we are. And I'm not called to bring light to the spaces that I'm not in. That's somebody else's calling,
Wow.
So it's like, I need to be faithful to what God's called me to do, and do that to the best of my ability, and trust that God's also working through somebody else to meet the needs of this child here and this child here and this child here.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of freedom in that, because I don't have to feel the weight of, all of the brokenness in the world.
Missing some
know.
section that
Right.
isn't being
It's
taken
like-
care of.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like God fully sees that. God fully knows that. Jesus has died and risen for all of us.
Yes.
And as a result, like God's uniquely bringing light into the world through each and every one of us. And we all have like a part to play in that. So being free to like step into the role that God's given each of you, me included, and live fully in that and trust that like God's working it out in the other parts of the world, in the other spaces.
And it's like hard to like disagree with the fact that like God's hand is in your situation with seeing the picture of Kavira like many years prior to, and then seeing it again, and then also getting an exception, and then getting the funding, and like just all the things. It's like, okay, well, obviously, like God blessed that situation, so you can say whatever you want about it, but it's like that's what I felt like I needed to do, and well, God provided, so we did it. So that kind of sets us, we're kind of wrapping up here. We got a few minutes left. This is the poke the bear time, where we're just gonna jab at it a little bit, and
Really? I need a
see-
soundbite of that just to keep with me wherever I go.
I recall a Facebook status that I posted a couple years ago, back when I was very much in the mode of posting poke the bear
type things.
things
Exactly.
on
Like
Facebook.
you should have titled them all, "Hey, get ready."
Yeah,
Here
that
comes
man, I got lit up on this post. Got tons of comments, was very well supported as well, but then like definitely got lit up. And like a lot of the lighting up happens in the private messages. So if you go back and troll that post, you'll probably be able to find it because there's 100 billion comments on it, but you won't see all the things that people wrote to me in private. And the post was something about if you're going to say that you are pro-life, then you have to be more than pro-birth. You have to be pro-life. And so right now we're very much in a political climate.
of swirl.
You just like crazy, everything,
right.
just everything's
Hey.
politicized. We're gonna live through another election cycle. By the time this show comes out, we will
Wow, crazy.
have survived yet another presidential
Thank you,
election.
Jesus.
We're here.
Hallelujah.
We're gonna
We
be
made
fine.
it.
It's gonna be okay. 50% of the country will be super unhappy, and that's just how it is. So I'm not trying to politicize this conversation at all, but in the context of the kind of like, let's just slap this sticker on things, and I'm pro-life, and I vote my values, and I would never vote for somebody that's not pro-life, and I have no issues with being pro-life whatsoever at all. I am very pro-life. But as far as it is concerning to the adoption story, how far does that statement need to take you as a Christ follower beyond just saying this is the thing that moves my vote this way or that way?
Poke, poke,
Yeah.
poke, poke,
I
poke, poke.
feel the bear.
poke,
The
poke,
bear
poke,
has
poke.
just been like, "Ah!" So I'm sorry about it. Feel free to direct message me.
Oh God, open invitations. No.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, like, particularly in America, there's this very sort of strange marriage between Christianity and politics and power dynamics, and it's difficult to really like unravel and tease apart sort of where, in a lot of cases for a lot of people, where one thing ends and the next begins,
Totally.
and I think it's because of the politicized nature of it gets reduced to this weird sort of oversimplified
Like
thing.
catchphrases.
Yeah,
Like
it's just
pro-life.
like, oh yeah, slap that on there and great. But but I think the reality is it's much more it just requires so much more attention than just sort of the hashtag or the bumper sticker. You know, and I think to be, I think if you're honest, I think if you're truly honest as an American in, you know, this country in this time, if you take to the full extent sort of the life of Jesus, the things that Jesus valued, I think you'll find that Jesus doesn't neatly package up into either Republican or Democrat. You know, and I think I think if you're honest, it's you begin to see the tension in that, and you begin to see, okay, I see Jesus over here on this thing, and then I see Jesus over here on this thing, and it's like neither one of these sort of fully encompass who Jesus is. You know, Jesus wasn't that way during his time, and he certainly
always
isn't
left
that
people
way.
hanging.
Always, you
He
know,
never actually finished a conversation
or
I'm
answered any
amazed.
questions.
He's just like, take it,
Let me
do
tell
with
you
it
a
what we
story.
will. Yeah, and you're like, wait, no, Jesus, I need something else.
Yeah. So, you know, so I think for me, you know, the pro-life statement is we've got to be able to be savvy, quote unquote, enough to really understand what we're talking about. You know, it can be a sort of slogan that represents a particular, you know, political stance on something. Or it can be so much more than that. It can be that we care about the lives of the unborn. It can be that we care about capital punishment. It can be that we care about the lives of, you know, immigrants and children at the border. It can be that we care about the lives of our houseless populations in our cities. I mean, this goes so many different
and
ways.
The foster care system.
Yeah, this goes so many different ways, and I think if you're honest and if you're willing to you know, step into some of the nuance of it, which is difficult
So
and takes
hard.
work.
Yeah.
But I think that's who Jesus is, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentally. And so if we're not willing to ask those questions, if we're not willing to contend with what being pro-life looks like to its fullest extent, then there's a disconnect between our Christianity and how we're living our life. There's a disconnect, and we have to be honest about taking a hard look at that and seeing what, you know, what's missing there.
And being willing to just sit in the wrestling.
Yes.
That awful tension that's so hard
100%.
to navigate. And then when you put it in the middle of people that have a very distinct line on a yes or a no on any type of a situation, it's none of it's easy. Yeah. It's good. There's growth out of it, but for sure, Jesus was like the worst at giving you the
streamlined.
I think that his biggest thing was like, no, I'm the way. And everyone's like, no, you're not. He's like, well, that's what I stand on.
You can think
and then
what you want.
And everything else, he's like, how about this tale of this person? And
you'd ask him a question and you hope to get the yes or no. But then he's like, well, instead, let me give you this weird story and then you decide what it means.
It's just brilliant. Just
Great.
so
Thanks
great. And
so
you're
much,
like,
God.
He'd be the worst director or the best movie director.
he'd be like, see how you interpret this scene. Oh,
Yeah. So I think like we just wanted to like invite people into this very tense
into the tension
spot, where it's like, if this is what you're saying, like Jesus does say, I spit lukewarm people out of my mouth, be hot or cold. If your words don't line up with like actually like what's in your heart, then like I think that there is going to be points in life where like there's reckoning for that,
Yeah.
and where things kind of make you uncomfortable and make you defensive. And like I continue to have many of those experiences on a daily basis, So I think we're just like trying to invite people into this conversation in such a way as to say like, okay, if Jesus were here and if he would in fact say, I am pro-life, what does Jesus's version of being pro-life
Holy cats.
actually encompass on a broader spectrum than just saying I'm, anti-abortion?
I think that, if I may be so bold, it looks like rescuing a kid in the middle of the Congo.
Yeah.
When your missionary group says, if you do, we're done.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good place to land.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Land in the plane.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much more that you can talk on this subject, but I think what's cool about these episodes is that we want it to be a ramp up for more conversation on your own, because there's no way we're going to be able to cover
No.
any of the all.
No.
There's no way. I mean, I barely mentioned foster kid, like the foster kid system, and there's people in my hometown that are doing that right now.
Yeah.
There's people that have adopted out of that,
Fostering, yeah.
and it is outrageously hard. It is ridiculously complicated and also
Very
expensive and just messy. Oh my gosh, the mess, because you don't know where anyone's coming
Sure.
from. You don't know the trauma that the kid you might have, if they have any. There's so many different things, but there's a bunch of verses where Jesus says, if you help people like this, you're helping me. If you feed them, if you give them water, and then all of the different stuff he says about kids.
Yeah.
And he's pretty adamant about that too.
I really loved what you said about like you're called to be light where you are.
Yes.
So like you, one person, like if you have a heart for kids that have no families, like a specifically big heart for that, you can't adopt every kid that doesn't have a family. Like it's not possible, but like I think that the real truth is like if you hold your hands open and are willing to be surrendered to the process that God has you in the place that you are in, how much more does that open you up to opportunities where things are, going to be difficult and nuanced, and you have to make a decision that maybe doesn't look exactly the way that you thought that it was going to look, or isn't as neatly packaged as, well, I've always wanted to adopt a kid, maybe it is that your story is this kid comes across my plate and it's like somebody says, hey, they need somewhere to live, and you're about to lose your job because your missionary organization says, do this, and like, we can't have you work for us anymore. It's like, well, I mean, there's no neat bows about that.
Yeah. I would love to meet your parents someday. My goodness, that'd be rad.
They're special people, for sure.
Yeah, so cool. You're special people. You
Very
and Aaron,
awesome.
for sure. Well, thank you, Zawadi. You're the
welcome.
best.
Thank you.
This has been so good. Thank you guys for joining us on Matters Over Miles.
Yes.
God, I love Seattle.
Keep coming back.
Yes, always and forever. Thank
Good
you.
coffee. Good sushi. Good people.
Good God.
More
Absolutely.
you need.
All right, guys. We will see you next time. And also, Zawadi's on different social medias
We'll
and
tag
different
him
things.
in all the things. So
Yeah, because if you ever want to ask any questions, he's
Yeah.
a safe place to land for any questions, or even on this topic specifically.
Totally.
All right. Well, we love you guys. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Matters Over Miles podcast, a resource of Water Within Ministries. If you would like to be a supporter of the show, head over to water-within.com/WWM and click the donate button at the bottom of the page. All donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.